Greetings, family. We are live. Welcome to the Sista Shanice show. As always, it is a privilege to be able to come before you. Thank you so much for tuning in. Let me grab that link so that I can be sending it out to the family. As you can see, we've got some of our beloved guests in the house. Let me just welcome them straight away. We have Kwame Gonza in the house. Welcome, Brother Kwame. How are you?
I'm great, Sister Shanice. Thank you for having this, evening. It could be morning, it could be afternoon, depending on where our people are across the world. Yeah, so greetings to everyone who's watching the Sista Shanice show. We appreciate that you are on the channel, and we are here to serve and have this discussion to reflect, of course, on the times we are living in. Thank you.
Thank you so much for joining us, beloved. And as you can see, we also have Brother Kabbalah in the house. Welcome. How are you doing, Brother Kabbalah?
Peace and love, freedom and decolonization to Sister and to all the African family around the world. I'm right good, excited about the moment at which we are. And yes, as you said, my name is Kabbalah, born in the colonial enclosure that we call the Democratic Republic of the Congo. I'm a member of the African Continental Unity Party, the ACUP, and also a member of the Free-Minded Pan-African Academy. And I'm glad to be here with you.
Honor, it's an honor. And let's also welcome our brother Pippin in the house. Welcome, beloved. How are you?
Greetings, Sister Shanice and everybody else. It's a pleasure being back here. It's a pleasure to see my fellow comrades who are doing something for the continent. Yeah, my name is Pidgin Odimwengo. I'm from Kenya. I am, of course, a co-chair of Consciousnism Study Group. I am a party leader, Accountability and Transparency Party. I am a former presidential aspirant. Along that, I'm a revolutionary Pan-African. Pleasure to be here today.
It's a privilege and an honor and a pleasure to have you on board as well. Family, the last time we had this same panel here on the Sista Shanice show was about 2 months ago. And during that conversation, we were talking about the next phase of our liberation struggle. Little did we know how close we were at that time to actually realizing that next stage. And as I was saying on my radio station, you know, an opportunity like this comes around about once in a lifetime. The last time, you know, we were feeling this kind of euphoria in terms of, you know, us experiencing the next phase of our liberation was probably in the late 1950s, early 60s. We've got so much to learn from them. So I'm really excited. So, you know, family, as you come through the door, let me give you a moment or two to come through the door. Please do give us a thumbs up, spread the link, let everybody know that we are live. Brother Kwame Gonza, I mean, did you know the last time that you were on this show that the next phase of our liberation was so close?
Thank you very much once again, Sister Shanice. Of course, if you are a student of history, I think you would be able to predict some of the events which are happening today. But before I go further, let me first thank my co-panelists who are on the panel. Brother Kabbalah is doing a great job, and I want to call all the people who are watching to go out there and support the Africa Continental Unity Party. They have a YouTube channel also. He's always broadcasting messages on the channel Africa Continental Unity Party, SCUP. So people need to go out there. And then my brother Pigeon here is also on the forefront of the struggle. The times have never been necessary like before for us to start working together in a harmonized way. Everyone is doing something in the corner, so we need to, harmonize those energies into a formidable force that cannot be resisted by imperialism and neocolonialism, as we have seen in the past, whenever Africans have come to work together in the diaspora and even at home, and they have put their efforts together. We saw Dr. King in 1957. He came to Accra, during the independence period of Ghana, which was the Gold Coast. He went back to the United States within a short period in 1958. The Civil Rights, bill was signed in the United States, So whenever Africans have worked together and energized each other, good things happen whenever Africans, come together and they talk to each other. So I think that the times today require this kind of approach for us to come and work together and hold hands and advise each other. And of course, leverage our strength, each of our strengths. So it is very important. This is very, very important. Yeah, you asked about whether I expected that things will be running very quickly like this. You remember, Sister Shanice, I've had a couple of contacts with you in the past since 2020 when I got to first know you, and you welcomed me. Of course, you hosted me on your channel a couple of times. We've been speaking about these things since 2020, that the times we are living in, are not normal and are not ordinary times. They are extraordinary times. COVID, revealed a lot of things across the globe. Those of you who have been following, a lot of big men and great men have been saying that the times are not normal. And so if we study the events that occurred in all the periods of liberation in the past, and we look and check and examine the events that have been happening since 2020, you can see also that these are not these are not ordinary times, but they are extraordinary times. The inflation, that has been happening up and down, economic depressions, the conflicts in the United States was pushed out of Afghanistan. When you go back to the 1940s, we had similar situations. Europe, there's a lot of chaos in Europe. In the 60s also, you could say 1945, you can see all this was happening also in the 1945. When you go back to 1800 or 1791, when Haiti was trying to start the struggle before it got its independence in 1804, you can see that there was also a struggle around there. There was economic problems in Europe. So even today, those signs, many of them are existent today. And so it is not an accident that even today you see that Africans have become very conscious. The technological revolution also has had an effect on the Africans. That knowledge has been spread out right now. So you can see that we know much more about our surroundings, ourselves, and we know so much about the enemy. And this also is evident when you go back to 1791, that people like Toussaint Louverture were studying. They used to get newspapers and read and understand what was happening in France. When you come to 1945, also the Nkrumahs, the Lumumbas went to the West and saw the systems operating. So they learned so much about the enemy. And even today, this is what we are seeing, that people are saying that France is a parasite, America is a parasite. So this is awareness. And all these are coming because of the, information. Our people are more educated. You go around the continent now, more than 70% of the people, young people, I think they are up to 80% educated. So there's awareness. So this was only inevitable, and it is only inevitable that it will happen. So the liberation, whether we want it or not, it has to happen. And this is the unfinished business. And when you see people behaving like this, it shows you that there's unfinished business, because you are not seeing these things happen in India, the demonstrations. You are not seeing them happen in China. They're happening in Africa, because in Africa, there's unfinished business. There's still an oppressor in our continent. So the question is now, will we take the opportunity as Pan-Africanists? Will we seize the moment. They call it seize the moment. You know, one of the Black Panther revolutionaries called it seize the time. He wrote even, Bobby Seale wrote a book about it and called it seize the time. So we have to seize the time. We have to recognize the time we are in and then seize that moment, seize the time and liberate Africa once and for all. Kick out France, kick out the United States, and kick out everyone who has been oppressing the African people. I always say that the biggest work for us as African people, not only on the continent, but globally, is going to be us finding a way of working together. Even when we have kicked out the enemy from the African continent, the biggest task before us is going to be harmonizing our energies and our thoughts and our ideologies, because in some cases, you will find that a lot of Africans are on different frequencies. Others are thinking like the enemy, others have, you know, have interpreted, for example, the Nkrumah's ideology differently. So our biggest task actually is going to be, working out and harmonizing our energies. But I think for now, we need to organize ourselves and respond to the time we are living in, respond to the events as fast as possible. We should be having a plan by now, an economic plan. Like, for example, if Pan-Africanists go to Mali and they give them, the government says we want to work with Pan-Africanists, what is the economic plan currently that we can present to Mali that we are going to transform this country in a period of 10 years or 15 years or 5 years or 20 years? Do we have that plan in place? I think we need to ask ourselves those questions. What is the economic plan? How are we going to pool resources? So I think all these questions we need by now to start asking ourselves these questions. Like Dr. Kwame Nkrumah's daughter, Samia Nkrumah, always says, there's unfinished business in Africa. And that unfinished business has to be handled with a sense of urgency. And I think the timing is right. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Brother Kwame Gonza there. Absolutely agree with everything you said there. You know, the time is now. We need to seize the moment. To what extent are we ready, though? Are we organized as Pan-Africanists? As we know, we have to learn from history. We are reliving the times. You know, this is, you know, possibly the Casablanca versus the Monrovia all over again. What is going to be the direction of travel for the Western region of Africa and for the rest of Africa? Is this an opportunity now for all Africa to come together? We've seen the hand of ECOWAS as it tried to actually pull together an army to invade Niger. We saw the king in Ghana come out and oppose it and stop the meeting from happening in Ghana to plan that invasion. We've seen the Senate in Nigeria, you know, reject and oppose the move for ECOWAS to invade and spill the blood of their own brothers. But nevertheless, across the pond in France, I was actually watching today a TV program of French politicians and strategists who are planning to invade Niger regardless. And so, you know, we have to be mindful that whereas on the one hand, you know, we are seeing a move, a revolutionary move where, you know, the brave ones and the courageous ones are taking back the country on behalf of the people with the massive support of the people. You know, the enemy is also within and outside, plotting and scheming to try and undermine, you know, that which we, the Pan-Africanists, want to see happen. And that is Africa, you know, being managed by people who have the heart and the mind for the people. So as you said, the role of the Pan-Africanists, especially in terms of educating the leaders, so that they're no longer jumping to the tune of, you know, their former colonizers, is critical at this stage. Before I go to the next, my next guest, Let me just welcome the audience. Yes, welcome the Jamaican drunk and the house. Where you been? When I see you this little while, you're not Jamaican drunk, bro. Anyway, good to have you in the house tonight. We got Sister Katrina in the house. We got Orbia Man in the house. Where you been as well, Orbia Man? Welcome, Black. We've got Brother Bernard in the house saying, great work you're doing, spreading the word. Thank you so much. Welcome, Zachary. Good to have you in the house all the way from Illinois. Black Beauty, always welcome, Black beloved. We got Epacho in the house as well, saying, welcome back, African freedom fighters. Mr. IC3 Black, welcome to everybody in the house. Simon, Meseret, Orbiaman, everybody in the house. We thank you so much for joining us this evening. Please grab the link and post it. We've got a beloved all the way from Martinique. Sita, I'm from Mali, Guinea, and Martinique. Yes, welcome. Maseret is agreeing with you, Brother Kwame, as well. John Henry Clark wrote that Africa might have might have the lock to the future, but I think that the diaspora have the key. We've got to get the lock and key together. Absolutely agree with you there, Maseret, and that is precisely, you know, the works that we're doing here on the Sista Shanice show. We're building the bridges between us in the diaspora and our brothers and sisters on the continent. We're sharing knowledge. We're sharing our views and opinions. We are the CLR James and the Padmores of the 1950s and 60s, working alongside the Kwame Nkrumahs on the continent. But as our beloved brother Gonza said, you know, as Pan-Africanists now, we need to organize properly. What is our plan? You know, to what extent are we going to be there to help and assist the brothers on the continent who have now taken on this huge responsibility? It's one thing to be a military leader, but it's another thing to actually lead a country, to be able to manage the administration, the ministers, make sure you've got all the right ministers in place, the budgets in place, the policies that need to be in place. So we've got our work cut out. If we want to influence those policies, if we want to ensure that that our beloved Mama Africa doesn't end up back in the hands of the colonialists and serving the needs and the interests of the colonialists instead of the needs and the interests of the people, all of that has got to be managed. What say you, beloved brother Kabbalah? Welcome to the discussion. Let's hear from you.
All right. Thank you so much, Queen. And once again, greetings to everyone. I thank King Kwame Konza for his in-depth analysis of the situation, and indeed for highlighting that we need to come together now. It's a high time for us as African people to come together. I think it's the world is changing in our eyes today, and the most important thing is that we are the ones who are changing the world. One of my greatest revolutionary thinkers, Stokely Carmichael, aka Kwame Ture, once said that every free people have the right, or must actually, define themselves, define their own terms, and make those terms accepted by other people. And the oppressor or the imperialist, and that power or that ability to define your own terms is the power that the imperialist must take away from you before they can oppress you, before they can colonize you. So that is what the Americans have been doing. The Western imperialism has been doing for a long time. They've been defining what is violence, what is not violence, what is legal, what is not legal, what is good and what is bad. And almost the whole world has been functioning on the definitions of the Western imperialism, of what is legal and what is not legal. So when, for example, the Western imperialism goes into Libya and destroy that country, it was legal. And we as African people, we applauded that. When they went to Iraq to destroy that country and kill Saddam Hussein, it was legal, because they are the ones who define what is legal and what is not legal. They are the ones who define what is constitutional and what is not. When they left Mobutu Sese Seko in the Congo for 32 years, while the people of the Congo were languishing in poverty and the wealth of the country was plundered, it was legal, because they are the ones who define what is legal and what is not legal, simply because that power to define for ourselves what is constitutional and what is not was taken away from us due to colonialism and oppression. But what is amazing, as I'm saying, the world is changing today, is that we are now able to define for ourselves what is right and what is wrong. And exactly Niger is an example of that. Burkina Faso and Mali are the examples of that, whereby we stand up, no matter how the leader came into power, when it's remarkably clear that he's working for the interest of the Western imperialism, we stand up and we seize the matter on our hands and we define what is right and what is wrong. And at the moment we're speaking right now, the Western imperialism as a falling empire is still pushing that agenda to say that these freedom fighters are the putschists, the junta, they are illegal and they are being coerced to leave the power for the puppet government or the puppet regime to regain the power and continue to supply the wealth of Niger to France and other European countries. But the good thing is that the majority of African people around the continent today are beginning to understand that it is over that time where we have to applaud the European imperialism when they tried to kill our heroes. When they killed Muammar Gaddafi, we applauded them. When they killed our leaders, we applauded them because we bought in their propaganda that branded our leaders as tyrants or dictators or so on, so forth and so on. But today, the people of Niger are standing with these freedom fighters, and the people of Africa all over the continent were standing with these freedom fighters in Niger to make sure that the power doesn't go back in the hands of the oppressor and their puppets in Africa. And we pray now, myself personally, I pray that this understanding and this revolution can carry on, for example, in Senegal, because it's a good terrain for revolution there. It can carry on in Ivory Coast. It can carry on in Uganda. It can carry on in Rwanda. It can carry on in all these African countries which are being led by the tyrants supported by the Western governments. And I here, before I finish, I want to call upon all the revolutionaries, Pan-Africanists, all the freedom fighters, not to use any longer rebellions, because rebellions will always cause death to innocent people. As my King Kwame pointed out about the technology we have available today, we have drones, we have a lot of means. So I ask and I plead with these fighters in Burkina Faso, these so-called terrorists, I plead with them, they must use the current means, technological means. For example, you can use a drone and let that drone blow on the head of one tyrant, one puppet leader, and blow him. And then when you blow the next one, after 5 of them, all the rest of puppets in Africa will have to resign. Will have to resign by themselves because of fear of what might happen if they continue to supply to the Western imperialism. So time is important. Time is crucial for us to seize the moment, as King Kwame said, and make the change, a fundamental change. Because if we lose this opportunity, another one may just come after 400 or 500 years of slavery and 500 years of oppression. So we don't have to allow these tyrants to cross over this 21st century in Africa. We must destroy all of them by all means necessary. If we have to blow their cars with the drones, it's very simple. You don't have to kill civilians. You don't have to be a to do terrorist attacks on civilians. You just need to take one guided drone and blow it on the head or on the vehicle of one particular leader whom we believe that is a tyrant and is a supporter of Western imperialism in Africa. We will bring change by that way. And why am I saying that? Some people may say that I'm supporting violence. We must understand that all the leaders in Africa who come into power at the moment, they find themselves in a situation where they are facing the threats of imperialism. The moment that you seize the power, the moment that you are elected, one thing that comes to your mind is that if I don't comply with the exigencies or with expectation of America or France, I might be killed or I might be sanctioned in one way or another. So this has created a kind of dynamics that allows our leaders to satisfy the Western imperialism at the expense of us as African people. And the only way we can change this situation is to create a force or a counterbalancing force that will put the same threat to our leaders from the people. The leaders must feel threatened by the people as much as they feel threatened by the Western imperialism. And that is the only way we are able to change this situation. And to do that, we must understand that all means are necessary. When we talk about violence, I understand the world God is led by violence. Today, the world is not ruled by love, is not ruled by democracy, is ruled by violence. When we talk about superpower and less power countries in the world, we're talking about those who are more violent, or those who have the means of violence and those who do not have the means of violence. The reason why America is feared is not because it's a beautiful country. It's simply because it has the means of violence that it can inflict on other people. So we, as the masses of African people, we must organize ourselves in order to build our means of violence, in order to counterbalance the violence that comes from the Western society. And the first people that we need to deal with are those puppets who willingly participate in the agenda of the African destruction by working for the Western imperialism. We must begin by hanging some of them on trees, all available trees on the road that we find. We put some of them there overnight. In the morning, people find them there. It will give a lesson and Africa will change. Africa will not change by prayer. We are conquered by power. Not prayer will serve us, it's only by power. The same power that put us down will elevate us. Peace and love. Thank you very much.
Peace and love, Brother Kabbalah, powerful presentation there. And, you know, you're dealing with the reality as experienced on the ground on a daily basis by our brothers and sisters on the continent. We see the images on the television of, you know, tens of thousands of our brothers and sisters being displaced because of terrorist activities that are happening on the borders of so many countries on the African continent. So when our brother talks about violence, that our people are living it on a day-to-day basis on the continent, and they see the hidden hand as well behind these atrocities, and they see who the key players are as well on the continent that's playing and dancing to the tune of their enemies. And it's very clear, you know, whose interests are being served. And so when our brother says, you know, that action needs to be taken against those treasonous ones in our midst, I have to absolutely agree. And that's why I want to applaud the revolutionary leaders of Niger as well, who are actually bringing a case against their former president for treason. And the penalty is going to be the death penalty. And if we as citizens, you know, were in a position to be taking action against our rogue government on the grounds of treason, I'm sure many of them, and the penalty was death. I think, as you said, beloved, they will start to fear their electorate as much as they ought to, so that they do the right thing by them as well. Just before we go over to our brother Pigdim, let me quickly swing back over to our audience. We've got more family members coming through the door. Please do remember to give us a thumbs up. Welcome, welcome everybody. We've got Kwame Aboje in the house as well. We have got Mela in the house, sending out cable and love and greetings. Afrijamo in the house from from Jamaica. From Ghana, rise up, brother Icon Bay. Good to have you in the house. Brother, our beloved Tida Dia is saying, we have had enough now. Enough is enough. Absolutely agree with you on that as well. Kwame Aboje, you know, agreeing with our brother there on what he is saying. So rise yourself up again. And he's saying, no, it isn't violence, though. He said, it's self-defense. Shanice, Obiaman, Afrijamo, Go Travel, etc. Brother Kwame, Kabbalah, and Pigdim, etc. We all know this self-defense. You're so right. You know, it's as if when we talk about violence, we're not supposed to. But you know, we're the ones who are under attack. At what point do we begin to defend ourselves? And so that conversation certainly does need to be had. Shalom, shalom to the Hebrew Israelite family in the house as well, rising us up, up, up. If you've got any questions, any points or comments, do put them in the chat. And, if you want to direct a question to a particular guest of mine as well, do put it in the chat and we will certainly come back round to your question. But right now I have the privilege of bringing to the platform our beloved brother Pigmin. Welcome, Pigmin. How are you doing?
Greetings, Mrs. Can you hear me?
Oh, we're getting some distortion from you just now. If you've got
Can you hear me?
Yes, hearing you now. That's much better. Welcome, welcome.
In the words of Malcolm X, bullet or ballot, revolutionary and solidarity greetings, comrades. I would like to
revolutionary greetings back at you, brother.
Yes, I would like to actually appreciate the brothers and comrades who have spoken before. I call them fellow fighters in this struggle. Africa must now be liberated either by bullet or ballot. Whatever works and convenient must work for us for the liberation of Africa. When you ask of the next phase of African liberation, I'll say this is the next phase of African liberation. We are the next phase of African liberation. Because the African liberation in this phase demands for a mass movement. And the mass movement, my brother Kabbalah is working on a mass movement across the continent called African Continental Unity Party. It has to take the mass movement beyond the mass party, as the words of Sankara and the words of Kwame Nkrumah, that the people must now be organized in a mass movement. And I want to appreciate and acknowledge the work brother Kabbalah and African Continental Unity Party is doing. It must take the connection and the media, our media, to do our story in our own way, in the way we want it. We don't want CIA-sponsored medias. And I want to appreciate the works of Brother Kwame Gonza in Africa Connect or Connect Africa, and the show you're doing, Sister Shanice, to show us our story in our way. This is unfiltrated truth of African history. We must have the media, and the media must be on our side in order to liberate Africa. This is the phase we are, so that we can send this information directly and straight to the oppressors and despots, that we know that their times are up and they must start packing now, or they'll pack dead bodies or they'll pack them. It must be clear to them that Africa must liberate itself either by ballot or by bullet. Any means necessary is not on us, it's on them to choose whether they want to go out peacefully or they want to go out violent. But we must liberate ourselves. The last phase of liberation must be accompanied by ideology and philosophy. And this is what myself and other brothers are doing in Consciousness Study Group, where we in this struggle must be back with philosophy and Pan-African ideology for decolonizing Africa. In the words of Sankara, a soldier without political education and philosophy is a potential criminal. If we are going to liberate Africa without a united Pan-African philosophy and ideology, we'll actually be criminals for Africa. And therefore, the philosophy and ideology of consciousness, which is the Nkrumah philosophy and ideology, is backed up with our own media and backed up with the mass party that Brother Kabbalah is working on. This is the face of Africa, and this is the next phase of the liberation of Africa. So yes, I'll say proudly and confidently that Africa is ready for the liberation, and this is the liberation. It has to take us here who are here and those who are joining us to actually move forward. To the words of Chancellor Williams, this is the plan. And this is the program for the liberation. We are not talking too much, we are acting. That's why your show is here and Kwame Gonza is here. We are talking and we are acting, and that's why Brother Kabbalah is here with SUB, and we are acting, and that's why the philosophy class of conscience is here. We must teach our people the philosophy, the ideology of African, backed up with lights of Ubuntu and conscious. Our people everywhere must be awakened. We call it the mental revolution, the mass awakening of Africans, and they're doing so. We want to awaken even the young and the old. For African liberation and struggle need all of us. And they must be organized. The organization is now coming in the mass party and the mass movement. And I'm proud that we're doing that. So yes, Sister Shanice, I'll tell you probably that the oppressors and the despots must know that we are ready and we are organized and we have the plan and the program to push forward. It's the time to choose the right way forward. Either they live peacefully or they live violently, as we did it during independence. We are not afraid to go this route. We have gone it before and we know what it takes to go through it. The younger generation, like my generation, the generation of young people here, this is the way forward. The young people must stop the dancing and the singing and the tunes of prayers and everything else. They must come out to this. We must support any means necessary, as per the words of Kabbalah and the words of Malcolm X, for it is time for Africa. And in the words of Padmore, he wanted to see Africa liberation now. He died without singing. We will not die without seeing it. It must come now. And this liberation of Africa is in all fronts. It is political liberation of Africa, it's the economical liberation of Africa, it's the social liberation of Africa, and it's the cultural liberation of Africa. We know that the ways of the neo-colonialism are subtle and violent. We must study them, understand them, and actually terminate and destroy their ways. We have known them. The good thing is that we know their ways, and this time we are organizing for them. They have looted a lot and benefited a lot from our continent as they leave us poor. They have taken a lot from Niger to make Niger poor. They want to control it. Any African that will stand in our way, we will categorize them as enemy and will destroy them with the enemy. In the wars and in the events that took place in Kenya in the eve of 1953, when the Mau Mau freedom fighters had to kill their fellow community members who were supporting and collaborating with the whites, if that is what it has to take, we will crush them down. We will crush each and every African who is a sympathizer of the oppressor. We will categorize them as oppressors and we will do away with them. It is either ballot or either bullet. It is upon them to choose the way they want. Thank you very much once again. I'm glad to be here. Thank you, sister.
Thank you so much, Brother Pigbin. We've got some slight interference there as you were speaking, but I didn't even want to stop your flow. You may not need to put it so close to your mouth next time round, okay? But what a powerful, powerful delivery that was. It was a, serious reminder of the works that needs to be done. So as, family, you can feel from this platform, we have, soldiers in the house. We have strategists in the house. We have administrators in the house. We have organizers in the house. We have young men who have a vision for Africa and want to see a better tomorrow, not just for the elite, not just for the rulers, not just for those under the thumb of the oppressors, but for all Africans. Our brothers are telling us they've suffered enough. The people have suffered enough and it's time for change. I want to know now, and I want to get a sense of to what extent are each of you actually representing the views of the people on the ground, because there are those, beloved, who sit in positions of power who will try and give the impression that what we are seeing is not a reflection of the entire African population or even a reflection of the majority, but it is just, a minority view. So let's go around the table. You're on the ground on the African continent. Brother Kabbalah, you're in the DRC. We've got Brother Pigbin, in Kenya. We've got Brother Kwame Gonza when he comes back on the ground in Ghana and Uganda. And you travel between these colonial boundaries. What are the sentiments on the ground? Is the revolutionary move that is happening and the takeover that has been happening over the last 3 years in places like Mali, Burkina Faso, and Niger, really just a few individuals taking power for selfish means, or are they really representing the mood of the people on the street? Let me go over to Brother Kabbalah first of all.
Yes, Queen, thank you very much for the opportunity. I want to thank Comrade Pygmy for his eloquent presentation. That was really wonderful and in-depth indeed. So, yes, one thing that we have to realize today is that the masses of African people is awakened. That is the truth. As King Kwame mentioned, technology has allowed us, even though it was primarily created to maybe exploit further the African people. But as you know, to everything, there's two sides of story. So many of us have begun to use technology in a way that enhances our understanding of life, our environment, and most importantly, trying to get us out of the darkness that has been maintained by the propaganda of the Western media. We have started to realize the truth. We know why we're suffering today, and we know the source of our sufferings. We know our enemies, who they are. We know our allies, who they can be, even though the Western media is still trying to portray some potential allies as demons. We know the true demons, but there's one thing that is lacking. That it is the people who can take decisions that will allow Pan-Africanism to become a reality in Africa. And these people are supposed to be in a political position to make decisions, because what we say is you cannot change the country, or you cannot change the society by asking for a good job, by asking for good salary, by asking for good roads to be built for you. Because when you're asking those things, you are asking for other people to implement them for you. But the best way to change the society is to capture the institutions that define what the society must become. And those are political institutions. So what is lacking in Africa today is Pan-Africanist in the leadership position, so that they can now take decisions that will make Pan-Africanism reality in Africa, decisions that will drive Africa towards its common destination, as we have experienced the common past, and we have the common predicament today. So our effort today is to make sure that before the 2050, we put Pan-Africanists into power in Africa. And that's the reason why we have even the ACUP, which is the African Continental Unity Party. Our dream is to see Pan-Africanists in power in Africa, to replace all these puppets, all these tyrants, all these employees of the Western imperialism. Some of them now are willingly presenting themselves or putting themselves available to serve the Chinese imperialism, right? So we need to make sure that before China, because whether you like it or not, China is an emerging power that will also portray itself as an imperialist power. So before we get locked up in a new form of imperialism, which might be now Chinese imperialism, we need to make sure that we have Pan-Africanists in power, so that they can now make decisions, because decision-making is what is lacking Africa today. We know the truth, but we don't have the power at the moment to make change effective, right? We can only build with the little means that we have to bring consciousness to the minds of our people, to organize ourselves in a community base, but to take broad decisions that can affect the whole continent is what is lacking. Look, people that we have in power. In Cameroon, we're 60 years old in power. I mean, Paul Biya has been there for 46 years. Before I was born, right? He was the president. Some people are born in Cameroon. They die. That guy is still a president. What does he do for Cameroon? In Uganda, you're talking about, I don't know, 36 years. In Rwanda, 27 years. So all these people, they're talking good speech, but they have the power to make decisions. But what are the decisions that they're making for Pan-Africanism to be implemented? Because we know no democracy will liberate Africa. No, capitalism will liberate Africa. Not even communism will liberate Africa. It's only Pan-Africanism, which is the last key for African liberation and emancipation. But the people who can make those decisions are lacking right now. So we encourage all African people, all young aspirant African leaders, to embrace Pan-Africanism, to join a movement that is preaching Pan-Africanism. And all of us as African people, we must make sure that we begin to elect Pan-Africanists into power, so that they can make decisions that are in correspondence with all our aspirations of liberation and emancipation. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Brother Kabala. I'm sure we all agree with you on that. You know, a round of applause to my panel today. I mean, wow, spot on in my opinion with their analysis and in terms of their projections for the way forward and what the next steps ought to be, and what our expectations ought to be as well of our leaders and those who we're grooming to become leaders. And for tomorrow's leaders as well, Pan-Africanism is absolutely the way forward. And this is saying to all of us who call ourselves Pan-Africanists that we have got a job to do to make sure that we, put the infrastructure in place in order to ensure that there is that mass level of consciousness raising that needs to be done I mean, we're all trying to do the best we can through these platforms, through social media and through our WhatsApp groups. And, you know, we've got our own virtual universities effectively happening across the board. But, you know, now we need to get to the places, our brother was saying, where we are electing Pan-Africanists into positions of power so that we can make the changes that we absolutely want to see. And what are the changes that we want to see? Brother Kwame Gonza, I wonder in your opening remarks, if you can tell us, as a brother on the ground on the continent of Africa, can you tell us what are the changes that you want to see? The European countries, they're absolutely terrified that, you know, millions of Africans are going to turn up on their beaches, you know, and on their shores. You know, why are people risking the Sahara, risking the Mediterranean, risking their lives to reach to places in Europe? What are the changes that you want to see and people your age group, you know, desiring so that you can have a better quality of life on the continent, please?
Thank you very much, Sister Shanice. Once again, I'm privileged, and I just want to thank the people who are out there watching us and supporting this channel. That is very important, extremely important, because the Pan-African media platforms need to be supported, and they can't be supported by anyone other than the Africans, because what these few Pan-African media houses which we have are trying to do is to come up against age-old, you know, conglomerates which are stacked with a lot of money and which are imperialists, and they are there to destroy the African people and to demonize the African people. So if the Pan-African platforms like this of Sister Shanice is out there, then we need all of us as Africans to support it. Let us take this channel maybe to 500,000, you know, subscribers in a very short period. I think this is very important. The events in Niger, they are significant because they are a demonstration of the feeling of majority of the African sentiment, or the sentiment especially of the young people who occupy almost 70% of the population on the continent. So it is no accident that the young people have been very vocal and have shown a lot of support. In Niger, the events that happened in Niger, they show what a lot of young people are feeling and what they want to do, where they want the continent to go, or let me say where we want the continent to go. But for a long time, we have been stifled. Our narrative, our aspirations, our hopes and aspirations have been stifled, have been strangled for a very long time. So when you see people supporting, pouring out on the streets, pouring on the streets and supporting the coup leaders who have overthrown the so-called democratically elected president, Mohamed Bazoum, then it shows you that there's something which is not right. And of course, this has been also the case all over across the continent. I will attempt to walk through what happened in Niger in the next few minutes. I will do my best, even though I have done a lot to do an analysis on this situation in the past, 3 weeks with my sister Malit from Connect Africa, where we have our platform. We do analysis on behalf of the continent. Post the link
when you finish. Post the link in the chat so that my audience can follow you and Malit there, please.
Absolutely. So we have done this for the last 3 weeks. But I would attempt to do it in a few minutes to walk through. So when the coup started, we paid close attention to what was going on there, because when these coups happen, you don't know which side the coup leaders are on, whether they are being pushed by imperialists. Because in the 60s, in the 1950s and 60s, these coups were used by imperialism to overthrow Pan-African leaders. You can speak of Olympio, President Olympia of Togo. You can speak of President Nkrumah himself, the giant. In 1966, he was overthrown through a coup. So it can be difficult to understand which side the coup leaders are on. And that is why you see that majority of the people will condemn a coup as undemocratic. Even in the 60s, when Nkrumah was overthrown in 1966, he went to Conakry where he was living. He condemned the coups, and he did not like these coups to the point that he wrote down and said coups are never good for the African people. But at the end, around the end of his life, he had written a book called the Handbook of Revolutionary Warfare. And he had seen that Africa has to enter a phase of liberating the continent through armed struggle. We have to take up arms and be able to liberate Africa, because he had seen that coup leaders had been taking over the continent, overthrowing democratically elected governments, which were Pan-Africanist in that time. So some people have used that to say that coups are always, coups are always negative. They don't represent the interests of the African people. But what we have seen, starting, for example, with the 80s with President Thomas Sankara, we saw that coups can be also used by Pan-Africanists to come to power. This is a tool that has been used by imperialism on one side, but Pan-Africanists also can use it, can learn to use it, as Pan-Africanists or African people or the interests of the African people don't have to be confined to one strategy. Because if we are confined to one strategy of liberating the continent, then we set a trap for ourselves. It means that we will be locked in one position and the enemy will have us in one position. The example is how democracy has been parroted as the only solution. Now, we have seen that imperialism has used democracy as a tool to dominate the African people and even shut down the African people. That our brother here was teaching us about social engineering, Brother Franklin Jones, that we have been sort of programmed, and they have been pumping us with huge propaganda and telling us that democracy is the only way. Yet imperialism is using all the strategies, to sustain itself, to dominate us. So I think that to a certain extent, the African people also have learned that we have to take these tools and also use them as in the same way that imperialism, is using them. So when we did our analysis at the period when the coup happened, we realized that these are people who are really tired with the workings of France, and they are tired of the fact that the president, Bazoum, is always in cooperation with the West. And so they sought a means of liberating the country and taking back the resources on behalf of the country. So there was death among the soldiers on the battleground, but every time they asked the president how to operate, the president told them that they should be asking France. They have to consult with France in order to fight against the terrorists. And mind you, the terrorists in the Sahel were brought in by the United States and France when they attacked Libya and destroyed Libya. So France and the United States, they don't want to take responsibility of this. And now the other thing is that the soldiers saw a disrespect to their country by the fact that the country Niger has more than 6 countries which have invaded it with troops. We have Belgium in there, it has troops. We have Canada, it has troops. We have the United States, it has troops. We have France, it has troops it was having troops in Niger. We have Germany, it was having troops in Niger. So you have more than 6 countries, they had troops, all of them in one country. So I think that the security people in the country, they felt threatened also. And we have seen this also in places like Ghana, that you invite foreign forces in your land. For the military people who are African, this is a disrespect. if they really understand what their work is. So I feel that the military people were, they felt disrespected by this gesture of the president bringing all these military groups of foreign countries in as if they cannot protect their country. And of course, when the coup happened, the imperialists, they panicked. And especially if you watch France 24, you can see that even the anchors were terrified. They have been talking all these 3 weeks, but you can sense panic, in them, that they are really terrified. How is France going to survive? On which energy? Because it has been mentioned that there is likely to be blackouts in France. So you can see, even when they are speaking within their voices, they are really terrified about what is going to happen, to their country. So this coup also, on one side, represents the failure of these 6 countries which have occupied the country. The fact is that for the last 10 years, when they have been occupying the country, or when they were invited to Niger, they have not been able to solve the insecurity problem. It shows you that they are not there also to solve the security problem, because you cannot be in the country for 10 years and you call yourself a superpower countries, but at the same time, you fail for 10 years to solve the insecurity problem. And which insecurity problem? You are the people who brought it to the Sahel. You killed President Muammar Gaddafi. And at the same time, you are saying you are coming to protect us. You are the ones who brought ISIS. There was no ISIS in Africa before the United States killed, President Muammar Gaddafi in Libya. So if we have ISIS, and which ISIS you brought from the Middle East, how can you again say you have come to protect us? I think that these are the questions which the African people now have started asking, and have started responding, rational, and saying, wait a minute, you people are the ones who brought this insecurity. How can you again turn around and tell us that you are the ones who have come to solve these problems? You have to get out. So we see that France has been given, of course, 30 days to get out of the country, and the United States has panicked. On the other side, they sent the Deputy Secretary of State into Niger to try to negotiate. They refused. The government, the coup leader, has refused to meet the Undersecretary or the Deputy Secretary of State of the United States, which is a very good thing. I believe that this is a very good thing, because in the past, I think these leaders somewhat have read some little bit of Pan-Africanism, because in the past, our leaders, when they have given in and negotiated with the enemy, we have gotten problems. And I can talk to you about, Tosa Louverture. When he accepted to negotiate with France, he was captured and killed. When you go back to South Africa, President Mandela, when he went to negotiate with the apartheid regime, the Freedom Charter in South Africa was abandoned, and people lost it. They did not get back the land. Up to now, the South Africans are still fighting to get back the land, and they have to take, they have to seek now the help of the whole African continent in order to take back the land. It is still a struggle in South Africa. So I believe that they have learned some lessons. So they refused to negotiate with the Victoria Nuland, who is the Deputy Secretary of State of the United States when she came there. But also, I think they must have understood that this woman is dangerous, because this woman played a pivotal role in the overthrow of a government in Ukraine in 2014. She organized the coup in Ukraine. So I think that they were very justified. So they must have learned a lesson in there from history, and also from this woman, and the fact that she's a very bloodthirsty woman, blood-drinking woman, who will cause a coup anytime, or will cause a chaos anywhere, or where she goes. This coup demonstrated also to us the position which ECOWAS and the African Union also hold. The fact that they came out very quickly to condemn the coup itself. The African people have been angered, greatly angered, and especially the youth, by the behavior of ECOWAS, led by, of course, the president of Nigeria. I will not say the Nigerians, because he doesn't represent majority of the Nigerian people. The Nigerian people, majority of them, they want peace with Niger, because these are our brothers, whether it is people in Benin also, they want peace in the region. They don't want to have a war with our fellow brothers. But somebody who represents imperialism and neo-colonialism is at the helm of this organization called ECOWAS. Is the chairperson right now of ECOWAS, and this is Bola Tinubu, who is the president of Nigeria. So ECOWAS was able to show its true face, that it represents the interests of imperialism. The African Union followed suit, and it went in the same direction, even though a few hours ago, the African Union has backtracked in its support of the ECOWAS, a program or activities, because in a few days ago, ECOWAS had said that it has activated the standby force, which is going to invade Niger, and African Union came to support. But a few hours ago, about 5 hours ago, African Union, I saw that African Union backtracked in its support of ECOWAS, and is saying that they don't agree, to an intervention. So we see an organization which is a little bit confused for the African Union. And I think that African Union, as we, the young people, once we take over power, we will have to clean that organization and clean it very well. All the elements who are in there, who are incompetent, and majority of them who are incompetent, and they don't even believe in African unity, I think have to be cleaned, because these tools, as Nkrumah warned in 1963, that divisionism and regional economic communities will be used by imperialism. And he warned even about the African Union and Organization of African Unity, that it will be used by imperialism. This is what we see, that majority of the African people were fighting against this, war, and the war drums that were beating. ECOWAS and African Union, they were supporting, the invasion of Niger. So it helped to draw the line, which people have been complaining about for a very long time. Of course, the religious leaders were able to intervene in this situation. I think that the coup leaders were able to show, consistency. They showed consistency, and they showed to which position they are. Because when you look at the religious leaders and the cultural leaders, when they went in, they were welcomed and they spoke very well. But when ECOWAS and African Union went in, they rejected them. So this shows you that these are really principled people, that they wanted to talk with the African civil society and the cultural leaders, but never wanted to talk to the imperialists. For me, this was very significant. Now, what is the way forward for us? I think that as I was beginning.
Can you hold it there on the way forward, beloved? And we will come back around and get the way forward from each of you.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much
Absolutely.
for that analysis. Absolutely brilliant. It gave me a real sense, and all of us, a real sense of what the feeling is amongst the people on the ground, towards the AU, ECOWAS. AU has changed its position, you said just now, hot off the press, that is. Thank you very much for that update. But agree with you, those institutions need to be cleaned, thoroughly cleaned from the top to the bottom. I mean, we're furious here in the UK, amongst the diaspora, to see that ECOWAS within days pull together, a 20,000 strong army ready to go and invade their brother country. And we have sat here and we've seen what's happened in Tunisia, the Mamilia atrocities that happened there. Where was the ECOWAS army then? We've seen the atrocities that are happening in Tunisia. Where was the ECOWAS army then? Where was ECOWAS when, all of these other really appalling abuses of Africans has been happening up and down the northern region of Africa and in other parts of the world? Where were they? Why were they not on the ships going out to the Mediterranean to save their people? To us, it's quite clear whose interest ECOWAS is serving, and it certainly isn't the interest of the ordinary African, wherever they may be in the world. So we're all absolutely appalled at the moment with the leadership of ECOWAS and the decision that they are trying to push forward with, which is against the wishes and aspirations of the people. So, you know, the fact that they're acting in opposition to the public, and you know, and the public has made their views quite clear, shows us that they're not a leadership for us at all. So yeah, thanks for your analysis there as well, and you know, all of what you had to say from the Pan-African leadership coming all the way down to the grassroots level. Wow. Let me go over to Pigbin, because, you know, he's in a different region of the continent. And likewise, we really want to get a sense of what the feeling is on the ground amongst the masses, because all of you, you know, you're working at a grassroots level, organizations at a grassroots level, debating and discussing all the time across your different agencies. So you get a real sense and a real feel of what the mood is on the ground. Are people in support, do you think, Brother Pigbin, of the revolutionary independence leaders who have taken over these West African countries recently, or are they appalled at the actions which have been taken? Please give us your insights.
Oh, thank you very much, Sister Shanice, once again. I'll start with the words of Kwame Nkrumah in the Afro-Asian Solidarity Conference on 10th May 1965. Nkrumah said, "The mass of the people can never become agents or partners of neocolonialism." He says, "The function of neocolonialism is to exploit, not to share with the people. In the like manner, imperialism, the father of neocolonialism, does not share. It grabs and exploits the people. It is the people, therefore, and only the people, who can save an African from neocolonialism and imperialism." Now, from the Kenyan perspectives, many Kenyans support what's going on in Niger. In fact, most of my comrades reach out to me so that we could organize a protest in Kenya to show solidarity with those in Niger. But we were so ashamed with the statements of our president, President William Ruto, who was paraded all over the world showing the face of Pan-Africanism. When he condemned the coup in Niger, it was really clear, not only to Kenyans, but all Africans, that is a puppet of the West, just the same way the ECOWAS leaders are. He first of all exposed himself in the Sudan war when he wanted to invite himself to mediate, and the Sudanese soldiers refused his intervention. He took our soldiers to Haiti to go fight our brothers in Haiti, which actually is contrary to Pan-Africanism. His team that was sent to Congo, the commander of that team from Kenya military resigned. So Niger's story actually showed us who our president, who purport to be Pan-African, is. But the people of Kenya are in solidarity with people of Niger, and all revolutionary leaders across the continent. We are in solidarity. And it must be noted, as also per the words of Kwame Nkrumah in Conscientism, page 103, that it is by the people's effort that colonialism was rooted. It is by the sweat of the people's brow that nations or nations are built. The people are the reality of national greatness, and it is the people who suffer the depredations and indignities of colonialism and neocolonialism. And therefore, the people must not be insulted by dangerous filtrations of neocolonialism. The people of Africa and the people of Niger have been actually insulted by the dangerous infiltrations of neocolonialism. And if the leaders are not ready to act, the people will act. We are happy that the military officers did not kill civilians. And we are happy if that can go on in all 54 countries without killing civilians. We are happy. And we must remind the military officers as well that, of course, the sovereign power belongs to the people. It is the duty of military to defend and protect the nation. And that extends to politicians and political leaders who want to exploit the continent in association with the colonialists. And therefore, they must be treated as terrorists. They are terrorists at capital index. They are looting Africa, not for the interest of Africa. And my message to the soldiers of Niger, that I am in solidarity with you. Bravo for what you are doing. And the comrades in Burkina Faso must join, as they have said, the Niger and all military officers in Africa, serving and ex-military officers, must come now to take their responsibility to protect the nation and protect its people from the politicians who are being used by neocolonialists. But once they protect the nation and take over the power from the politicians who are puppets of the West, they must ensure that that power is brought back to the civilians, because the sovereignty of our nations belongs to the people. We don't want to see instances of what's going on in Sudan. We want to see that the people who are celebrating in the street of Niger actually are given back power to them to actually exercise it democratically. The democracy of West has failed in Africa, and Africa needs to redefine that democracy if it has to work and serve them. And therefore, wherever we are, the ex-military soldiers, the serving military soldiers in Africa, this is a wake-up call and a reminder to you that it is your duty to protect and defend the nation against politicians and everybody who loot from us. Bravo and solidarity, comrades.
Bravo and solidarity to the comrades of Niger, Burkina Faso, and Mali. Yes, indeed. Our beloved brother is frozen. Hopefully, he'll be back with us in just a little while. But another powerful presentation there, mainly directed at the military, to remind the military of their responsibility towards the people and not just towards the elites, and calling on all serving and ex-serving soldiers there as well to get involved, take over. And I would add to train young people in the art of military, in the art of serving and protecting their country, because for too long, you know, those of us outside of Africa have watched on painfully as the soldiers have acted dreadfully towards their own people. And, you know, it is a new day now. And this is a new mindset of military. And I would hope that if ECOWAS was successful in recruiting 20,000 soldiers to send to Niger to invade, that those soldiers would all refuse to kill their brothers, their cousins, or their sisters. Wow. Anything further from either of you in terms of a message to the military? They have a powerful role, a critical role on the continent, and we have seen how the military has been used by outsiders, you know, to act as a police force, you know, and a buffer between Western interests and the people. What would your message be? Let's have a brief message from both of you as well to our African military. What is the way forward for the military? Let's go over first to Brother Kabbalah.
Thank you very much, Queen. As King Pigbin mentioned a word from the revolutionary Thomas Sankara, he said, every soldier who does not have a political and ideological education is a thief, is a gangster in uniform. So I think for those who have seized the power, they have to establish a Pan-African education, because that is the only ideology that is able to serve Africa, of course. So they have to establish a Pan-African education for the soldiers. And truly speaking, I don't think there's a need for a Congolese army. I don't think there's a need for Ghanaian army. I don't think there's a need for Burkina Faso army, because all these armies are the copycats of Western civilization. They are the products of Western imperialism, right? There's no a history of war, or I should say protracted war between Ghana and Ivory Coast, for example. So what is the reason for Ghana to invest its mega economy in buying written off weapons in Europe to arm itself against who? Will Ghana be able to resist against England? Well, Ghana, no matter how much weapons it buys, will it be able to resist against France? No. The only way Ghana can be able to resist is if Nigeria is equally able to resist, is if Burkina Faso is equally able to resist, is if Congo is equally able to resist. So that means we need a continental army. So my message to these freedom fighters is for them to begin integrating already the armies into a federal army that will be able to defend the whole Africa. Mm-hmm. You know, Burkina Faso does not need to defend itself against any African country because there's no history of war. We are having this kind of military strategies because we want to copy always Europe, and forgetting that Europeans themselves, the reason why they have invested so much on the individual armies is because they have evolved in a very war of destruction and extermination among themselves, and their strategy is justified. But us as African people, Ubuntu has been always our philosophy and our way of life. Therefore, the only enemy that we need to arm ourselves against is the Western imperialism. Therefore, these soldiers from Mali, Simi Goïta, from Niger, Burkina Faso, I think Guinea as well, we are calling them in a spirit of Pan-Africanism to integrate the military into forming what we can call a nucleus of the federal states or of the United States of Africa, so that other countries can join. And then before the end of this decade, we will find ourselves with a continental army able to protect the whole continent, not to protect one country, but the whole continent. In 2016, I'm closing there, we spent about 46 billion US dollars individually in Africa for our defense budgets. And that money was solely used to afford the head of states to drive in armed vehicles to protect themselves against their population, and to have a luxury life, and to have mercenaries that are protecting them. However, when you look at the military budget of Russia, for example, which is about 60 billion US dollars and 46 billion US dollars, we are almost about getting a continental army that would defend Africa as Russia is defending itself. Why we don't have that power? Simply because that money was misused, right? So if we can bring that budget together, we are really one step from liberation that we are talking about, because military is a key in the liberation of Africa, not negotiation. You can build economy, but unless you have the power to protect and defend that economy. We have a good lesson in 2011. Muammar Gaddafi had lots of money, right? But he didn't have the means to defend and to protect his economy. Obama stole his money, right? Because Gaddafi didn't have the means to protect his economy. So Africans, we are longing for economy, but let's also think about the protection of this economy. Because without the protection, we'll be like people who go into the dealership, buy Lamborghini to park it on the streets, because they don't have a house with a parking where they can park their car. So we need to think critically. And to finish, our freedom fighters in Guinea, Mali, Burkina Faso, Niger, let us integrate our armies. Let us bring together our military badges to build the continental army, which is the only means we can defend ourselves against the oppressor. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Wow, wow, wow. The wisdom amongst the young people on this planet. Sorry, planet. I feel like, yeah, on the planet and on this platform. Wow, it's phenomenal. Blowing me away. Rise up, Brother Kabbalah. Over to Brother Kwame. Your message for the soldiers, the military on the ground in Africa, where we are today, way forward? What would your message be, beloved?
Thank you very much. Actually, majority of the things have been said on the side of the military, but I will attempt to add a little bit more. It is very good what the soldiers in Burkina Faso, and also we saw, President Ibrahim Traore, when he was speaking at the Russia-Africa Summit. Actually, he evoked the spirit of the youth. You could see that his speech at the Russia-Africa Summit, which went viral, in fact, was a representation of the aspirations, the hopes and aspirations of the young people, looking at the questions he asked at that meeting. Of course, to which one of the people who responded was President Museveni, who's going into his 8 years. So President Traore is in his 34 years, and he asked particular questions regarding why are we poor, and then we have leaders here who are behaving like puppets. So this showed that this next generation is really focused on liberating the African continent. And of course, Burkina Faso and Mali have expressed interest in unifying their policy on defense and even economy and foreign policy. That is why we saw that Mali was very quick to come out and Burkina Faso and say that we will fight alongside Niger. I think this is a very good sign. It is a very good sign. So I would encourage all the other military people across the African continent, the soldiers across the African continent, that the interest which they should be protecting is the interest of the African people, not the interests of the imperialists. Because at the end of the day, imperialism, when it comes to the continent, it is going to disrespect them, because you cannot say that 1,000 military officers from the United States will come to a country like Niger, or will come to a country like Ghana and protect the country more than around 50,000 or 30,000 of our own soldiers. So this, by our military, should be looked at as a disrespect to them. It should be looked at as disrespect, and they should take this, to heart and even respond to these particular so-called heads of state in the various African continents who have decided to be puppets and justify it. And they should question, how can you say that 1,000 American soldiers or 1,000 American French soldiers are able to protect our country more than we, about 20,000, about 10,000, about 15,000 or 50,000 soldiers? I think these questions should be asked candidly, but the soldiers, I think they should be able to understand that their responsibility is to protect the African resources and the African people. If the African resources are being taken out, then that means they are not doing their job. And we, the African people, we will ask for them to account for this, because this is their responsibility also. So on the other side, like what King Kabbalah mentioned, we want to encourage them to work together, the ones in Mali, in Guinea, in Burkina Faso, and in Niger, because we want to see in the next 10 years that Africa is unified and we have a single military. Also, the Pan-Africanists, we need to reach out to them. And when we reach out to them, these soldiers, I think they should try to be open to a civilian rule, which is Pan-African. It is not enough anymore right now to say that we want a civilian rule when that civilian rule is not Pan-African. Any civilian rule that is not Pan-African, I think should not be welcomed. So even they themselves as soldiers need to look at a situation whereby the country has stabilized in the interest of the African people, because it is not, like I said, enough anymore to put, the government in the hands of puppets who claim that this is a civilian rule that is representing the people, yet in the actual sense of it, it is not representing the people. So this is my message to these soldiers, that they should protect the interests of the African people. And many of them need to put the foot down in all the other territories of the African continent where they are puppets. But all this should lead us towards a unified army across the African continent. I think that should be our aspiration when it comes to security and stability of the African continent. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Brother Kwame. We've lost Brother Pigbin. Oh, look, I can see he's ready to come back in. Absolutely fantastic. While I admit him, let me go over to the chat and see some of the comments that we've got in the chat. Brother Natron is saying, yes, one Africa under one Black government, Amandla Newetu. Brother Kwame Aboje is saying, yes, we must train our young people as well. Hazel saying, the coconuts on the continent are very foolish and selfish. Yes, indeed. Kwame says we need more of our sensible leaders in Africa to weigh in this extent. These stooges, such as Nana Akufo-Addo in my country of Ghana, who is an idiot for yawning. Okay, yeah. I think there's a lot of discontentment, definitely, about his leadership. There's Kate Safer is saying that she's been doing a lot of thinking lately about how people have been suffering from colonialism. The migrant crisis here in America, she said, is a reminder of the suffering of the people on the continent. Mondele is in the house. Yenge, my beloved. He says, bravo, young man, Odiwengu, for stating the truth. Stand of Auto Aro, Pan-Africanist, actually an African killer on the same part of Tabuha, falsely known as Museveni and Kugami. Okay, lots of criticism here in the chat about some of our older leaders who have been in position, I think, for far too long, they're saying. Let's go through and pick up one or two more of the comments in here. The Jamaican Junker, so why is Kenya and other East African countries not intervening in Sudan instead of focusing on Niger and Haiti? And then there was a further comment somewhere else that was asking, is it because these are Muslim countries and they don't want to offend the Arabs? You know, that is another topic for discussion, but a serious topic we need to discuss. And that is, you know, the Arab influence on the continent of Africa that really needs to be addressed because it can actually complicate things on the continent. Kwame goes on to say that Mandela Kagame failed to stand up to those demons when they murdered our Hutsis and Tutsis in Rwanda. Yes, indeed. Lots of comments in the chat. The illegal president of Nigeria, Tinubu, needs to be kicked out of government too. A call there for the head of the Nigerian government to be removed. And I think we all know why that call is coming. Albi Aman says the unity of the Sahelian leaders is a most desired step from here on. Absolutely, they all need to come together. And I think, you know, kick out those army bases in their regions. And I'm sure they will see a massive reduction in the so-called terrorist activity that's happening on their borders. So I'm going to go around the board now. And I think we need to have a little bit of a discussion on how we can learn from history, because, you know, we mentioned quite earlier on in the show that the Western powers are shaking in their boots right now. We know that they blew up the Nord Stream pipe in Russia, thinking that they're just going to start getting their gas from Niger. Niger has said, no, we're not going to be allowing you to go through Niger with this gas pipe. So they're really worried about that. France is really worried about not being able to access the uranium from Niger. Extremely worried. They're talking about invasion. They're talking about how they can use African soldiers to fight Africans on the continent because they don't want to spill the blood of their own soldiers. You know, we've talked about the importance of the military. We've also touched on the importance of bringing our scientists in as well, because there are multiplicity of ways of fighting wars, and we need to, you know, take advantage of the technology, drone warfare, for example. So, you know, but we also need to be prepared in terms of what the next steps could be from the enemy and how we can counter, you know, what they're likely to be. So obviously we don't expect, you know, any discussion around how we can counter, but what do we think, what do we suspect their next steps are likely to be that we need to be warning our people against? Let me see if I can go around the room very briefly to get some lessons from history that we're saying we need to be watching out for, and we need to have a counter strategy to address. Or do we not want to speak it into existence? Let me be led by you here. You can tell us, you know, if what you think our next steps ought to be in this next phase of our liberation struggle. Let's go over to Brother Pigbin, who has now been able to rejoin us. Important next steps, beloved, protection, defense, or do we go on the attack? What is your position here on this?
Oh, thank you once again, Sister Shanice. I'll start by saying this is the next phase of African liberation. We who are here. The next phase of African liberation will demand the mass movement, which is said Brother Kabbalah is doing. The next stage of African liberation will demand our own media, which yourself and Brother Kwame is doing. The next phase of African liberation will demand the ideology and philosophy, the Pan-African ideology and philosophy, which we are doing in our consciousness study group. We must speak to the consciousness of an Africa. The African must wake up. And when he's up, he must be informed the right information through this show and what Brother Kwame is doing. And when he's ready for action, he must be organized in a mass movement that Brother Kabbalah is doing. So this is the phase of Africa. And we know that they will react. They are called reactionary forces. They will come in to use the puppets. We must be very strong and straightforward to the puppets, that if they join their masters, we will treat them as their masters. The story of the house nigger and the field nigger, or the house negro and the field negro, should not exist. If we are to be treated as negros, we are all negros. So if you think that you are a house negro because you are a puppet of the West, we will treat you as the West. We will impeach you either by ballot or by bullet. We must take you out. We know they will come with the sanctions. We don't need their money. The money they loot from our minerals, then they bring it back in the terms of AIDS. We don't need them. The words of Tamar Sankara, we don't need AIDS that cannot aid us to liberate ourselves. So let it be clear. The next phase of the liberations, as I will quote one question by Brother Kwame Nkrumah, the senior, he said, do we mobilize, rely on the people in the struggle against imperialism in all its form, or do we relegate the role of the mass of the people to a secondary place in the struggle? And he said, I say that only the masses of the people can ensure victory in our struggle. Therefore, our next phase should be the preparation of the masses. Touch one, touch all. In our brotherhood and in Ubuntu systems, if this is not the first coup in Africa, it's 220-something coups in Africa. If they organize another insurgency coup, we'll organize another one against them. And if they come straight to us, we will attack all their bases in Africa. All military bases in Africa must get away completely. If they take it hard, we will face them. So it's on their choice. Whether they want the ballot or the bullet is not on our choice. It's on their choice. If it takes us back to the forest like the guerrilla warfare, we've done it before, we will go back. Our mineral can never feed people who have refused to grow up. They still want to suck the breast of Mother Africa until death. We are tired of breastfeeding them. If they cannot walk on their own, we will step on them as we walk forward. Thank you, Sister Sun.
Thank you very much, beloved. We need to prepare the masses for liberation, educationally, militarily, politically, culturally, psychologically. There's a job to be done, and our people have got to be ready, by the ballot or the bullet. Wow, that sounds like, you know, Bookman Dottie of Haiti's spirit come back there. Woo! Let's go over to Brother Kwame. Brother Kwame.
Thank you very much, Sister Shanice, and thank you, Pigeon, for that message. Yeah, I think that right now, since we have realized what time it is as a people, I think within especially the ranks of the revolutionaries themselves who are on the front line. Of course, Sister Shanice, you have already taken the lead. You are on the media and informing our people about what is happening. And of course, you bring together these revolutionaries here to come and inform our people, bring them that analysis. I think it's very important that this be a time, having realized that we are not in ordinary times, the times we are living in are extraordinary times. It is the time then for us to close the ranks at all costs. At all costs, we should be closing the ranks and harmonizing our efforts and making efforts while we have the long-term goals, like building a unified party, a vanguard party. You can talk of the Africa Continental Unity Party, which my brother Kabbalah is building. I think on the other side also we should have the short-term goals that when we have situation like what is happening in Niger, we should immediately organize ourselves to reach out and send a message in there. And of course, these are efforts which I'm already engaged into bringing together a group of elders so that Pan-Africanism and Pan-Africanists can take their place. I want to see Pan-Africanists, at the center of the affairs of the continent, at whatever corner, at whatever event, whether it is on the continent or in the diaspora, whether it is George Floyd has been shot down. I would like to see Pan-Africanists, going in and issuing a strong statement, whether it is the African Union. So I believe that we should be able to intervene in Niger as Pan-Africanists. A time ago, I had arranged, a group of people who were supposed to go into Mali, even though I faced challenges and I was not able to succeed. But I believe that we must consistently, relentlessly try again. So I believe that even in this period we are in, is that time that we need to continually push forward, continuously try, and this one fails and we try again. The imperialists are doing that. That is what they are doing. You have seen that Victoria Nuland, the Deputy Secretary of State of the United States, a murderous woman, of course, and a bloodthirsty woman, blood-drinking woman. She went in and they rejected her. They go back and they will start scheming again. I think this is an attitude also as Pan-Africanists, which we need to adopt. We go and we scheme, and then, we face challenges, we fail. We need to get back up immediately and start again. This is the attitude which we have to have as Pan-Africanists, so that we can also reach a point where we will shame the people who are saying that it cannot be done. Pan-Africanism cannot do it. We can do it. What we are realizing right now is that since the 18th century, imperialism has been greatly weakened. And it has been greatly weakened because of the work of the Pan-Africanists. In the 18th century, we did not have control over our bodies. We did not have control over our minds. We did not have control over our resources. At the entrance of, in the 20th century, we had liberated our bodies and we liberated also our resources, even though we still have in the midst of us certain elements who are still controlling and giving out our resources. These are just sellouts. And of course, imperialism is doing this covertly. But when people realize that we have now sellouts inside, that is why you are seeing what is happening in Niger. So it shows you that to a great extent, imperialism has been greatly weakened. It's just that they are not saying it. So this should energize us as a people, and we should continue to make our assault. So I believe that we should be aggressive, extremely aggressive when it comes to harmonizing our efforts as Pan-Africanists, and then pushing both the short-term and the long-term solutions. The long-term solutions, of course, we know they are for the unification of the African continent and building a single military. But these are suggestions which we can present as a short-term strategy to these governments which have taken power, and they are taking the power in the interests of the African people. So now we need to organize ourselves and reach out to them in the short term and tell them, this is where we want you to go as Pan-Africanists, as people who have the interests of the African people, as people who have the interests of the African people at heart and are the custodians of the ideas of our forefathers who wanted this continent to be completely independent from the exploiters and parasites, which you are fighting against, the French and the Europeans and these Americans. So I think that that is the strategy. So that is what I am currently working on. And I invite all Pan-African groups and all Pan-African groups for us to be able to move in this direction so that we can work on the short-term and the long-term objectives of Pan-Africanism. But in all, Pan-Africanism has to be at the center of taking back the continent. If we do not want, again, groups of people who have diabolical and evil schemes, that is what I mean, to come and hijack the revolution that is going on right now. Because if we do not intervene, this revolution is likely to be, hijacked, and then it may fall in the hands of the wrong people, just because we have not done our lot. And I think we need to aggressively harmonize and pursue those short-term and long-term objectives. And we are already working on that. So we invite others to jump on board. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Brother Kwame, and thank you for the great works that you're doing out there, rounding up the Pan-Africanists so that we can get our agenda out there to the leaders, and hopefully that agenda will have a plan, a revolutionary plan that will, as we've talked about in the past, leapfrog Africa into the next century in terms of technological advancements, scientific advancements. We've got the brains. Our people on the continent have proven themselves. I mean, look at the scientists that have come up with helicopters and cars that run off water, that run off of radioactive waves. We've got the scientists on the continent that have got the technical knowledge and know-how. And what we need now is to have leaders who can get behind those scientists, leaders who are prepared to establish educational institutions, Pan-Africanist educational institutions. We were being reminded in the chat of the work of Adolfo to try and kill all memory of Kwame Nkrumah, but the name that rings out on this platform is the name of Kwame Nkrumah, the vision and the ideology of Kwame Nkrumah. And with August and tomorrow being the birthday of the late great Marcus Mosiah Garvey, who influenced the great man Nkrumah himself, we have to also remember him. He is in the wind. Our ancestors are blowing in the wind, and we are feeling that wind of change today. It is wonderful that even though they have gone and left us, their ideology, their philosophy, and everything that they stood for is still, guiding and leading our movement today. Absolutely phenomenal. Everything that you said there, beloved. Our Pan-African movement now needs to grow legs. It needs to get stronger. It needs to get faster. and it needs to be in a position where it can sit with leaders and be an aid and an assistance and to be able to guide governments as to what they ought to be doing across the board in terms of construction, development, science, technology, engineering, communications, satellites, everything. We need a complete restructuring of the continent, and we need to put our young people to work. Our young people are talented, they're skilled, and they are ready to work towards building their nations. Well, we don't need anything from the West. We don't need their bits of paper from the World Bank. We don't need their bits of color paper that they call money. We don't need that. We've got our own wealth. Why, we have been, hoodwinked into believing that we need their bits of paper. Well, hey, this generation that you have excluded from your bits of paper and have gotten on quite well so far don't need bits of paper from the West. So they can take that where they're going. Those who are friends with Africa, they need to bring technology, they need to bring factories, they need to bring manufacturing industries. They need to help to establish schools of engineering, schools of greatness, that's going to transform our continent. We've got a job to do. We are rounding up now. Let me go over, before we do our last quick fire and final remarks, let me go over to Brother Kabbalah. I don't think I took you, Brother Kabbalah, in hearing your vision for the way forward.
Thank you very much, Queen. The Provisional President of the United States of Africa, His Excellency Marcus Mosiah Garvey, told us that the only protection against injustice in men is power. That power can be scientific, technological, or economic. Every time you don't have the power, you're going to be always a subject of other people, domination, and domination gives birth to oppression. The suffering that we have gone through as the masses of African people is due to the fact that we have made ourselves powerless. Or in other words, we have become so comfortable with the state of powerlessness, mostly because we thought that by a certain miracle, there will be a supernatural leader that will come and in a blink of an eye, change the whole situation in Africa. Or maybe God or the gods will send an angel who will come and develop Africa. And yet when we walk through Paris, New York, Beijing, we see beautiful buildings and all this stuff. We forget that they are human beings who build those things. So for me, the way forward is for us, the masses of African people, to rise up and to seize the power. One of the significant changes that is happening in the world today is that the political power is slowly escaping our traditional politicians. They are being now hired by what we call the lobbyist groups, who hire politicians, give them the mandates. And that's why every time we elect them, and the first actions they take is against the will of the people. And you see the young people go down the streets and protest against the people that we have elected. So what we need to do now as the masses of African people, we need to recuperate the power by organizing ourselves and change the system in such a way that there's no a single policy that the parliamentarians will approve if it's not first and foremost approved by the masses of the people. Because a true democracy, I believe, will imply that any decision that affects your life must involve you in its drafting. So these people that we are electing, they are, when they get to power, they mostly make decisions that are against the will of the people. So we need to change the system so that the power can belong to the people in such a way that any significant decision, whether about mining or whether about any kind of policy that will have a profound change, it must firstly be approved by the masses. If we are happy with that policy, well, let's give it to the president or whoever who has the power to amend the policy, to amend it. If we feel like this is dangerous for us as the people, we say no and it's not going to pass. By doing that, what will happen is that we will take the power from the hands of the lobbyist group who have our politicians in their pockets, so that they don't implement the policies of the lobbyist groups who pay for their campaigns, but they implement the policies that we as the masses of the people approve. So that is the way that I see that we can significantly change our situation. If we rely always on the leaders to do for us sometimes what we are supposed to do for ourselves, we will be always victims of Western imperialism and their puppets in Africa. The water is being moved at the moment. Time is right. It is a correct moment to make a move to change this system. By all means necessary, as my kings have just mentioned it. So it is time to seize the power as the masses of African people, and we have to begin by organizing ourselves. And what I've just outlined now is one of our political policy as ACUP, is to make people the deciders or the masters of their own destiny, so that there's no decision that will be made on the lives of the people without their involvement and without their approval. Should you be interested, join us in the ACUP, because it's only when we are together that we'll be able to make this happening. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. And thank you for the great work that you're doing in the ACUP as well, beloved. This is the kind of change that we need and the sort of movement that we need happening on the ground. Absolutely. The power has to be with the people. And that's why, you know, we had a brother on the show before, and he was talking about having like a people's court. So for our people to be powerful, there needs to be some kind of institution, I think, as well, that, you know, houses that power to some extent, and that can take action against those who go against the desires and the wishes of the people. And so he was saying that there are too many leaders who are actually committing treason. You know, they're implementing policies that go against the interest of their people, and they were elected by the people to serve the people. But instead, as you was just saying, they're serving the interest of lobby groups. They're serving the interest of so-called investors. They're serving the interest of foreigners. So, you know, they're actually behaving in a treasonous way towards their population. But at the moment, there isn't anything in place for the ordinary citizen in order for them to take action against those treasonous leaders. And hence why I suppose we're seeing more coups. And also now where we're seeing the leaders of Niger actually bringing a case against their former president. And, you know, if their president is found guilty, the penalty could be death. The penalty could be death. And, you know, unless the leaders feel as fearful, you know, towards the people turning against them as they do feel should the West be against them, until we get that balance, I don't think we're going to get the leaders, you know, at the moment, acting in the interest of the people, unless we remove all of them and they're replaced with Pan-Africanist leaders who are protecting, because we know what the intentions of the West would be when we replace those leaders, if they get the opportunity. Well, we are, you know, we're 9 minutes away from the top of the hour. We've lost our brother Pigbin, who has been having some technical difficulties there from Kenya. Oh, look, he's back. Absolutely fantastic. But it's really good to see the stability of the internet that we've got in the DRC and that we've got in the Congo as well. It's come a long way, hasn't it? Because do you remember, like a couple of years ago when we were trying to do these broadcasts, you know, with yourselves from the continent, the challenges that we were having, you know, with the internet. But yeah, it's good to see the changes. To everybody in the chat that has been commenting, thank you so much. You're asking what's happened. What do you mean? What's King Kambala is saying? What's happened? I don't know. What are you referring to? Please enlighten me. And Kwame Aboje is saying, family, there's another fool who's yawning too. He's from Nigeria. Yes, we've touched on, I think, Ebola, Tina too. Yes, and let's let's go down and see some of the comments. So if we've got any comments that we might want to bring in. Wonder Love of the World says, Brother Kwame, yes, once I'm done here, I'll go over to the channel and sign the petition. Oh, what petition is that? The Swahili Nation petition. There's a link. I'll put the link in the chat, please, so that everyone can sign it at the end of the show today. I'm sure it must be a petition that we would all want to support. Kwame says, any leader that betrays our people and our land should be punished. Absolutely. We need, Jamaica Janko is saying, an internal corrective force. So, you know, general agreement there to what is being said in the chat. Let me give each of you just 2 minutes more now to make some final remarks. What a wonderful presentation and discussion we've had from each of you. I certainly hope that people will take the clips from here and post them, you know, out there as well, because we need to get these messages out to our people. So do take the clips and do the sound bites. Let's first of all go over to our brother Pippin for some final remarks.
Oh, thank you very much, Sister Shanice. I'm impressed that we reached this moment. I want to appreciate the fellow comrades who have been giving their opinion and thinking. I'd like to say, by starting by the words of Steve Biko, that the greatest weapon in the hands of the oppressor is the mind of the oppressor. And that's why at the Consciences Study Group, which we do meet every Thursday and Saturday, on Thursdays, we do the study of conscience in the book of Kwame Nkrumah's An Ideology and Philosophy for Decolonizing Africa, that Nkrumah, having studied Marcus Garvey's work and all the works of previous Pan-Africans, put down a direction for philosophy for decolonizing Africa. We do study it for the purpose of liberating the mind that is being used as a tool by the oppressor, so that when we can liberate that mind, then the oppressor actually will have no place anymore. I'd like to say that in this phase we are moving forward, if we are not armed with the proper ideology and philosophy, they will come and confuse us with the same Africans who are either conservatives, but we need the progressive, radical Pan-Africans. He who thinks about Africa for all in the Ubuntu spirit, and not he who thinks about himself or his family. The problem we have today in Africa is that the politicians and the political leaders are liberal and conservatives. They don't think of the interests of the whole Africa. They think of the interests of themselves and their families. And therefore, we must correct this. To bring it to an end, I'll say that it is us who can change Africa. And all we have to do is the little we can, and that should be our best we can. And we will say it gladly, that there's no Africa without us, and there's no us without Africa. We were born here and we will die here. It's our responsibility to make it great or bring it down. It's not for our interest, but for the generations to come. It's a war that has been passed over to our generation. We cannot avoid it. Let's do it to our best to ensure that the next generation might enjoy a freely and truly liberated Africa, if we cannot enjoy it in our time. And this is the interest and the passion for all of us. But we must come together, put our resources, put our time, because he who is colonizing us even now, or colonizing us even now, has put his time and resources. And no better, there's no greater thing than being Africa. And if Africa is not great, you will never be considered a great person out there. The Chinese are 1.4 billion people in one country. India, 1.4 billion people in one country. What is the purpose of Africa having 56 to 55 countries with the same 1.5 billion people? Does it serve the interests of Africans or the interests of the politicians and the West? It is time we think that it is true the African great and be liberated. Hotep comrades and revolutionary greetings once again, solidarity comrades. Homeland or death, we shall win. Greetings.
Mahatotep, comrades. We will win indeed. Let's have some closing remarks from Brother Kwame. 2 minutes for you, beloved.
Thank you once again. Yes, the timing is right. We have seen that, and it is only just that we also act rightly, we respond to the call. And it is through the struggles of our ancestors who laid the work on which we are building. We are standing on the shoulders of giants who fought for us, even in worse conditions. We spoke of Haiti. They fought, they fought in even much more worse conditions than we are. So we should not take what we have right now for granted. It has been paid for with blood and sweat by our ancestors to give us what we have today. So the resources which we have today, they are not for us to enjoy and be on television sets and show off how we have Lamborghinis and Bugattis. But those resources are for us to complete and do the unfinished work, to finish the unfinished business. And that business is for us to build the African continent so that every single African, whether it's living in Brazil or in the United States or the Caribbean, or even on the mother continent, has food on the table. Each one of us should be able to clothe decently. Each one of us, we should not live like the West, because before the West came here, we never had street people, street children. We never had prisons. This is the type of society we should aspire to build when we have a society that feeds and clothes everyone and schools every child and gives medical care to every child, every one of our people across the world, in the continent, across the world. Then we will know that we have achieved the dream that our forefathers started, and we will have contributed our quota when we feed each other and work together. So that calls for Pan-Africanists right now, who I consider the custodians of the dreams of our forefathers and ideas, to spring into action immediately to work together and hold hands together and contribute and lead our people towards victory, which is very much needed in this generation. And in the next in the next 10 years, because we believe that by 2033, Africa should be completely liberated. It should be a different place to live, where the dreams and aspirations of all African people are fulfilled whenever they come here and they step here. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Brother Kwame. Just a few seconds left for our Brother Kabbalah. We're already over time now. My apologies. Brother Kabbalah, a few closing remarks from you.
Thank you very much, Queen, and thank you to all the audience that has been watching us from the beginning. In closing, I would say that if it was by force that we were dehumanized, enslaved, colonized, and today neo-colonized, it is not by prayer, it is not by wish, it is not by talking only that will rise. It will be still by the same power that put us down that we'll be able to elevate ourselves. And the first dimension of that power is in our ability to organize ourselves as African people. Kwame Ture said that if you organize, sometimes you get things done sometimes. If you don't organize at all, you get nothing done at all. But if you organize always, you always get things done. If we want economy, organization. If we want jobs, organization. If we want security, organization. If we want a better future as African people, organization. So I appeal to every African person, male or female, who listens to us at this moment to question yourself. The same way that you are working for capitalist enterprises that exploit you, how much contribution are you putting to the reconstruction of Africa? And if you don't have any organization that you are part of, join one, find one right now, join one and bring your contribution, because it's only when we are organized well and structured enough that we'll be able to stand and to rebuild Africa the way we want. Otherwise, as disorganized will be always the praise for those who have well organized themselves, no matter how wicked they are. But the fact that they are well organized and structured, they'll be always taking power. They'll be always dominating us. So organization, organization is the way forward. Peace and love, freedom and decolonization to all African people. We greet you and we say, if you have two shoes, please sell one and buy a sword, because now it is time for revolution. And this revolution is not on the streets, right here in the mind, because we don't control this one, then the enemy controls our bodies and make us the tools of self-destruction. Peace and love.
Peace and love, peace and love. Black Hatchet, beloved. I want to thank you, Brother Kabbalah. I want to thank you, Brother Kwame. I want to thank Brother Pigbin in his absence. I also want to thank the panel for tuning in and for staying with us throughout the evening, for all the comments in the chat. You know, thank you all so much. I've certainly learned a lot from the wisdom of our young freedom fighters here today. It's actually been a privilege. You know, these young people who we're looking at today are tomorrow's leaders. You are tomorrow's movers and shakers. You are the future that Africa needs. And I want to rise you all up for the works that you're doing in your respective countries, and sending you power and strength from our ancestors. May they, you know, and open doors of opportunities for you so that we can do the organizing, the building, and the great works that need to be done to prepare a better tomorrow for our children and our children's children. Remember, we come back as well. So the works we do today is in preparation for when we come back. As a people, as Africans, we never die. We keep coming back. So let's do the works today so that when we come back tomorrow, it's a better tomorrow. More love, more strength, more voodoo power. Sister Shanice out of here for now. Thank you, family.